What's up, 49er fans? This is the Nine and Nut episode 15 coming at you. Oh, hope everybody is well as we now await to see what happens in this off season. So many different things going on, whether it is the updates in the Jimmy G situation or other off-season acquisitions that hopefully we're going to make, re-signing, I should say, free agents that we have, the upcoming draft, as well as the upcoming 2022 schedule, which was released, which I am looking at right now, which is very interesting. But first things first, just getting back to the news with Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know how many of you saw, but there is some type of rumors going along out there that Washington would actually be interested in trading their first round pick for Jimmy G if it all worked out, which is rather shocking to be honest, at least to me. I had said in my one of the previous shows that I did not see that happening whatsoever. I didn't see a team trading a first round draft pick at all. And it's, again, not a knock at him. I just didn't think that they were going to do that. But again, things are always changing. And again, this is just, I don't know how true this is. This could just be speculation. But that being said, it is rather interesting to hear that they would be open to doing it. They do pick at 11, which would be a pretty damn good place to get a first round draft pick, especially for a team that has given away 2 first round draft picks in the next 2 upcoming drafts. So if we're able to pull this off, we should take that deal and run with it and then some. To pick at number 11 for a veteran like Jimmy G, I think is really in our favor if that's the way things are going to go down. That being said, I think it would work out well for Washington as well because they would get a veteran who has a lot of experience and would be playing for a really good head coach in Ron Rivera and for a predominantly very well-talented team who had a real good season last year, took the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the brink, and then this season kind of fell short a little bit. They had a lot of injuries going on, but they had a lot of upside to them, which was very interesting because it's really good for the future for them. A lot of good young players in there, and you never know. Jimmy G comes in there as a veteran. His leadership, his skills, I think that it could definitely be a positive thing. Now, again, you don't want to kind of cling to this story so closely because you want to see how it plays out. But if we did get that 11 draft pick, I wonder what we would do with it. Well, would we go defensive backfield? Would we go defensive line? There seems to be a lot of good defensive players out there, primarily in the backfield. Derek Stingley, Ahmad Gardner, Trent McDuffie, Kyle Hamilton, and a wide variety of other players. There was also a rumor I had seen passing around that the 49ers would be interested in another wide receiver, which I'm kind of confused at, being that Juwan Jennings has really stepped up to be what I think would be a very secure third wide receiver in along with Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. And now, of course, we've also heard that they're going to give Debo an extension and offer him a lot more and lock him down, which is very understandable. So I don't know if that would be true with the wide receiver. Although I guess in today's league, like running back, you can never have too many wide receivers. And also, too, in this draft, we also know that it is not a quarterback-heavy draft. It is just looking at a lot of these mock drafts and what have you. There's a lot of defensive players on the board. Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon, um, Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan, David Ojabo from Michigan. So it'll be interesting to see what would happen if we got that pick. And again, I don't want to get too ahead of myself with that because sometimes that kind of takes away from everything else. So it'll definitely be something to keep our eyes on. And I think that Lynch and Shanny are going to definitely put together a very solid deal for Jimmy G. I think if they do end up putting a deal together for him. I think that they're good enough guys that won't send him somewhere to die. They'll definitely either send him to a contender or a team on the verge of doing something really good. And I think Washington would be a perfect place for him to land in for various different reasons. They've kind of reshaped that organization, the face of that organization. Obviously, they changed the name. They have the great Ron Rivera at coach, and they have a lot of talent on that roster. If you didn't have a chance to watch them this past season, they were very interesting to watch. Again, they were a couple plays away, a couple of games. They were in a lot of games, which is very interesting. And could have easily been in the playoffs for sure, especially playing in that NFC East, which was all over the place this year, and for the most part could possibly be for the next few seasons to come, because we don't know really what to make of the Philadelphia Eagles yet. We don't know where they're going to go, what direction they were going, and even though they made the playoffs, they did not at all perform well. We know what the Dallas Cowboys are because we sent them packing. The New York Giants, of course, are under a new head coach, and we'll see what they are. I don't expect great things from them, especially with Daniel Jones at quarterback. So this Washington team is in a good place, especially if they get themselves a solid veteran quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, moving on to next year's schedule, not going to be easy, that's for sure. But what is easy in life? So obviously, at home, they're going to be facing the Cardinals, the Rams, and the Seahawks. And on those three teams alone, it'll be interesting to see what happens with those three teams during the offseason. We also know that supposedly there's that whole back and forth going on with Kyler Murray and the Cardinal team. Supposedly he deleted all, I don't know, he deleted himself from the Cardinals Twitter page or something like that. I don't know how true that stuff is, but supposedly he was not happy with the way they lost in the playoffs, which is understandable to the Rams. The Rams, of course, are riding high. They're going to be looking to piggyback on that. It'll be interesting to see if Aaron Donald comes back, because there were rumors that he would be retiring. They will be getting Robert Woods back. That'll just add another notch to their receiving belt with Woods, Kupp, Van Jefferson, and Odell Beckham Jr. And Seattle will be an interesting team to watch during this offseason because, again, a lot of rumors about Russell Wilson's future. Although I don't think Russell Wilson's going anywhere. I think that's the perfect place for him. And to be honest, the Seattle Seahawks, just the injuries absolutely destroyed them this year. I don't think it was so much one person. Russell Wilson damaged that finger, and they also lost Chris Carson, which was, I hate to say it, but worked out well for Rashawn Penny, who played really well. But it will, I can't put the blame on them per se. And of course, they have the always great head coach in Pete Carroll. So I don't think that there'll be too many drastic changes to that team. But who knows? At home, the Niners also face the New Orleans Saints, which will be interesting to see. Of course, new head coach Dennis Allen. We don't know who's going to be the quarterback there for the future. They will face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Tom Brady-less Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That will be something interesting to keep an eye on because we don't know what's going to happen to that Tampa Bay team as well. Kansas City Chiefs, which will be a rematch of the Super Bowl 2 years ago. The Los Angeles Chargers. That should be a very good matchup. They're a very talented team, but yet they still can't seem to close the gap in a lot of games. And I don't know whether it's a case of they're not there yet or they're just not capable of it. But whatever the case may be, they've got loads of talent on that team. That should be an interesting opponent. Then the Miami Dolphins. Now that's going to be a good game. Uh, ex student versus teacher, right? Mike McDaniel, the new head coach, former offensive coordinator under Kyle Shanahan. The Dolphins, another team that has a lot of talent. They had a hell of a good season under Brian Flores this past year, and even a better one last season. And they were an underdog, and I think under McDaniel they're going to do good things. A lot of young talent there, so it should be interesting to see where they finish, especially in that AFC East, which seems to be up in the air, except for the Buffalo Bills, who are the absolute the strong arm in that division. And then we will face Washington, which would be even more interesting if we trade Jimmy Garoppolo there. Can you imagine Jimmy Garoppolo coming back into Levi Stadium to face his old team? That will be something to watch if that happens. I cannot imagine Niners fans booing him whatsoever, but it'll definitely be something to see. On the road, we will, of course, face the Cardinals, Rams, and Seahawks, and then face Atlanta. And Atlanta, again, Arthur Smith did a phenomenal job this year in his debut as head coach. They were another team that was picked to finish dead last in almost so many different pools, but really played well throughout the season. And they were limited, of course, through injuries. Calvin Ridley did not play the whole season, of course, walked away from the game for a bit. Um, they got a lot out of Kyle Pitts, the rookie tight end. So that should be a competitive matchup. Carolina in Carolina. Again, could Jimmy G end up in Carolina? Is it possible? Who knows? We could be facing him on multiple fronts, depending on what team he goes to. That's a winnable game, just looking at it right now. The Denver Broncos in Denver, of course. Could Jimmy G end up in Denver under their new head coach? Who knows? Or could that position go to Aaron Rodgers? That Denver team is already very competitive and just needs to be solidified at the quarterback position to be deadly. The Las Vegas Raiders, another good matchup. Uh, Team, got to give them a lot of credit this season with everything that went on. They still were able to get into the playoffs. Almost pulled that game away from the Bengals, too. Derek Carr had them playing at a different level early on in the season. He looked like he was going to could have been MVP, but then things, of course, changed with the whole John Gruden situation and then so many other things that had gone on. But nevertheless, a very well talented team who's still building to get to the top, and they're playing in a crazy division, a very, very talented division in the AFC West with the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Broncos. That could be one of the better divisions in football, one of the more tighter, more competitive divisions in football. And finally, the Chicago Bears, who we defeated this past season. It's a winnable game. I'll say that right now. The Bears suck. Okay, Justin Fields we saw this season didn't really play as much as I think a lot of us would have thought, but he had his ups and downs. But for the most part, I think he really has a lot of work to do, and I can't put all the blame on him because he was playing on a team that at times just looked heartless and just didn't look like the talent they had, and they obviously had a lot of injuries too. They lost Khalil Mack for the season. I don't know what happened to Allen Robinson there. It seemed like he took second fiddle to Darnell Mooney. So I don't think he'll be back there. But looking at this schedule, it's definitely not going to be easy. And a lot of the rankings right now in terms of power, have the 49ers at the top. And also there are rankings for what teams are Super Bowl ready have us at the top as well. So that's always a positive, I guess, if you want to look at it that way, of course. Of course, nobody knows what the future holds in these next couple of months and whatnot. But looking at this schedule for what it is right now, it's definitely not going to be easy. There are various teams here who had winning records this year: the Cardinals, the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Chiefs. Um, I mean, the list goes on, and that's I think what a lot of people are looking at a lot of the time to see how many of these teams had winning records, and that's how they'll I guess how they evaluate the strength of each team's schedule, depending on who they're playing, where they're playing them, what they did the previous year, whatnot. So again, the Cardinals and the Rams with winning records, the New Orleans Saints with a winning record, the Buccaneers with a winning record, the Chiefs, obviously, um, the Chargers, Miami Dolphins. So that's what do we got? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven teams already from the games at home. And on the road, we obviously on the road, we're facing a couple of teams that did not have winning records, but I don't, again, the Broncos did not, the Falcons did not, Carolina did not, and the Bears did not. And another team that had a winning record would be the Las Vegas Raiders. So that makes a total of 9 teams that we face with winning records. So definitely not going to be the easiest of seasons for us. Just looking at the schedule, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams went to the playoffs that we're facing. So again, that's something to consider as well. And with everything going on right now, obviously this takes kind of a backseat to the other issues going on with the roster and the trade with Jimmy Garoppolo and the moves they're going to have to make in the draft and the free agent period. But it is still something to be considered. For the most part, this team should be very similar in terms of roster to what we saw this past season. I can't really see them making any drastic moves that would alter what they already have because let's face it, the good thing about them is that the players that they have to resign, they can definitely afford to, and they need to because those are, for the most part, very integral players to the team. And I can't really see them going out spending large amounts of money on free agents, especially when this free agency period really isn't so deep at various different positions, and we don't really need too many things to improve. And it'll also be interesting to see what happens with the draft and how we stockpile our picks and what we pick. So that being said, I think that this offseason will be focused primarily on the Jimmy Garoppolo news and where and if he's traded and where and if he's traded to. But other than that, this is probably one of the more toughest schedules in football, I would think. And who knows what a lot of these teams that we're going to be facing are going to be in the future. Like I said, I don't think the Bears are really going to get any better yet. Atlanta could possibly improve. Carolina, I really don't think they're going in the right direction. I mean, again, another team that has a question mark at quarterback with Sam Darnell and Cam Newton and Walker. So I don't know what's going to go on there. Arizona, too. I mean, they're a very talented team right now, despite the way they finish and despite whatever's going on with Kyler Murray. They were missing DeAndre Hopkins, of course. We'll be facing the Rams twice. So the World Championship Rams, which will always be which will be very interesting. A matchup to see. We'll be facing Washington and New Orleans, depending on. It'll be interesting to see what happens to the New Orleans Saints, but this is going to be a very competitive schedule as opposed to this past season, where again wasn't an easy schedule. I mean, other than the Detroit Lions and the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Chicago Bears and the Houston Texans, we faced a lot of good teams. The Eagles made the playoffs. The Packers made the playoffs. Arizona made the playoffs. The Rams, obviously. Cincinnati, Tennessee. So it was a very competitive schedule this season as well, and it turned out for the best. Um, and depending on what happens in this offseason, it'll be interesting to see. I think that the way the league is right now, for the most part, most teams are going to be competitive. They're really isn't a lot of teams out there that are just bottom of the barrel anymore. And I know everybody will automatically think of the Detroit Lions, which I understand. Again, who knows what's going to happen to them in the future? I can't. I hope for the best for them. I always find myself pulling for them a little bit. I like how competitive they were despite the losses they had. But a lot of teams really, I think, are going to be competitive. When you look at a lot of these divisions for the future, you see the talent is everywhere. The AFC, you have Buffalo and New England and Miami all have winning records. Obviously, the bottom of the barrel with the Jets, but I expect the Jets are going to get better, and those other three teams are going to be right at it again. In fact, Buffalo will probably be much better, a step better, and so will New England for that matter. Then you go to the AFC North. Cincinnati Bengals made it to the Super Bowl. Cleveland's a question mark. Baltimore's a question mark because we really don't know. I think it's possible you could have seen Lamar Jackson at his worst this year, and it makes you wonder what he really is. Is he really a quarterback's quarterback, or is he just a magnificent athlete playing the position? The Pittsburgh Steelers, it'll be very interesting to see what happens to them at the quarterback position. But again, on paper, they have a lot of talent. They also have a lot of free agents to resign. Then you go to the AFC South. Tennessee Titans, the Colts supposedly who are going to supposedly look to trade Carson Wentz. Houston, obviously rebuilding, and so is Jacksonville. So not the most competitive division. The AFC West, as we talked about before, an extremely competitive division. Three winning teams this past season: Kansas City, the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Broncos were a step away from being a winning team. So that division could have gone either way. That's a tight one. A lot of talent there. And you go to over to the NFC, as I talked about before, in the NFC East, you got Dallas, you got Philadelphia, who made the playoffs. Washington was in the race for a little bit, and you got the Giants, who are obviously rebuilding, so they're not there yet. So 3 out of 4 teams. And then the NFC North, Green Bay, Minnesota, I think, is a question mark. We don't know what's going on there. Chicago, not ready, and Detroit, obviously not ready. So that's one of the weaker divisions as well. So you have the NFC North and the AFC South not being the most competitive. I'm sorry, the NFC North, rather. NFC South, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina. Carolina, obviously, being the bottom of the barrel there. And, of course, our division, which we all know is one of the most competitive divisions. So, for the most part, a lot of these teams are going to be better than they were or a step up. I can't see a lot of them taking, well, I can't see too many of them taking a step backwards, although it could possibly happen. But we do have those teams that are obviously going to be in a rebuilding mode still and going through that process. And I mean, Jacksonville and Houston, of course, as well as Carolina. And I think that for the most part, that could be definitely something to keep your eyes on. Um, Detroit, Chicago, the Giants, the Jets. Those are the teams you're going to be looking forward to rebuild and probably maybe squeeze 3 or more wins out. Maybe more, it's possible. But for the most part, I think that you already have a good amount of teams here that are going to be extremely competitive and make everything a lot more exciting. Now, a lot depends on what happens in the offseason, as we always have to keep an eye on and wonder about, as well as the draft and what moves are made. But for the most part, I think a lot of these teams are set in stone. But again, it'll be a very interesting schedule to look at right now, and I wonder. They rate the schedule now based on where these teams finished, obviously in this past season. But I wonder come fall time or come late summer how this schedule will rank. And I think it really won't change. It'll definitely be one of the tougher schedules in football for the most part. But that's always, look. We Niners never have it easy, man. The Niners never have it easy, and that's a testament to who they are as a team, and that's what we like to do. It's hard enough. We're playing in probably the most competitive division in football. I don't care what anybody says. I think it's the best division in football, and coming out of the NFC the way we did, we showed that we could. I always say our Super Bowl was against the Green Bay Packers. If you ask me, that was the highlight of the season, despite how the season ended. So there's nothing about this team I hope that changes. Even if they choose to keep Jimmy G, I hope I would be okay with that. I don't see that happening, but I would be okay with that. But it will be very interesting to see what happens in the upcoming weeks. So please keep an eye out for everything. And these rumors are very interesting to see and hear about, although you have to kind of take them with a grain of salt where they're coming from. And hopefully they're true and hopefully they're accurate. Well, not so much accurate, but hopefully they're coming from real sources. But again, things are always changing. I think a lot of us are just on the receiving end of what happens. But just something to keep your eyes on, as always. So you've been hanging with the Niner Nut, and I should be coming back at you guys with another episode, possibly this week and next week. If you have not, please go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. I appreciate it a lot. You can also find me on Instagram and on Facebook. Anytime you want to message me, hit me up. I'm always down to talk all things 49ers. So, everybody be well. Peace.